Welcome to the MNC PPC Department of Parks and Recreation celebration of National Nutrition Month. Throughout March, experience fun, interactive nutrition workshops and cooking demonstrations where you will get nutritional tools and explore ways to make healthier choices for the entire family. Be sure to share what you learned during this session with a friend or family member. Thank you.
Again, welcome and thank you for joining us for our celebration of National Nutrition Month. My name is Eric Brooks, and I'm a Health and Wellness Assistant at the Department of Parks and Recreation. Before we begin, let's go over a few housekeeping items. You should see a microphone icon at the bottom of your screen like you see here on this screen. You will need to click this icon to mute yourself. We would ask that you remain muted to limit any distractions during the program. Next, I want to draw your attention to the camera icon. You will use this to turn your camera on and off. Please be mindful that when your camera is on, all participants joining us this evening will be able to see your screen. You have the option to keep your camera on or turn it off, but remember, we want to minimize distractions throughout the program and keep a focus on the presentation being provided. The last icon I want to tell you about is the chat icon. This will allow you to ask questions throughout the program. To type a question, you would just click on the icon like the one you see on the screen to bring up the chat box, and it should take you to what you will see next. Once you see the chat box as you see on the screen here, there will be a space for you to type your question in. Hit enter and we will see your question on the screen. Please ask your questions throughout the program, and there will be time at the end to answer your questions. We are looking forward to having an excellent discussion tonight. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our trained professional for the evening. Melanie Burdick is a registered dietitian, licensed dietitian nutritionist, certified diabetes care and education specialist, certified specialist in obesity and weight management, and a certified personal trainer. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Dietetics from Eastern Michigan University and a Master's of Science in Applied Nutrition from the University of New England. She believes in practical steps to improving health and wellness where no foods are off limits. Welcome, Melanie. They're all yours.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for that nice introduction. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead, upload my presentation, and we'll go ahead and get started. I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. It's always good to see some lovely faces at the end of the day. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to upload, and we're going to get started here. All right. Well, we'll wait for that to upload here in just a moment, and then we'll jump right in. Again, I am Melanie Burdick. I am a registered dietitian, and I'm a member of the Healthy Living team at Giant Food. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we do at Giant at the end of today's presentation. All right. It looks like we're ready to rock and roll here. So tonight we are going to talk about practicing mindful eating. Now, let me know in the chat, is this a term that you've heard? We've been hearing a lot about mindful and intuitive eating lately. And so let me know if this is a topic that you've been reading about or heard about or you're curious about. Let me know in the chat. All right. So on the menu for tonight, we will learn the difference between mindful eating and mindless eating. And we'll talk about some examples as we go through. Then we'll also talk about some of the implications of restrictive eating, also known as dieting. And then we'll also identify some external and internal factors that influence our behaviors and our level of mindfulness. So I always love this presentation because it's a great opportunity to think about your behaviors and do some assessing and say, hey, you know, are there any activities or behaviors that maybe I could change to be more mindful? Okay, so mindful eating, what does this mean? Whoop, uh-oh. There we go. Uh-oh, technical glitch. I clicked something. All right, so what is mindful eating? So there's actually a definition for this. Merriam-Webster, the dictionary that we all know, defines mindfulness as the practice of maintaining maintaining a non-judgmental state of heightened or complete awareness of one's thoughts, emotions, and experiences on a moment-to-moment basis. So essentially, when we're mindful, no matter what activity that we're doing, we're really just 100% present in whatever task that we are doing. So when we think about mindful eating, we're really being aware of the entire eating experience. So we're thinking about how food affects us, how it smells, how it tastes, the textures, the consistency. And so think about your eating habits. It's 6 o'clock. Maybe you may or may not have had dinner yet. Maybe you had lunch earlier today. When you are eating, would you say that you are 100% present? Can you identify when you are full? So some things to think about. Now, what's interesting is that we are all born as cute little babies, like we have here, as mindful eaters, which is great. So think back, if you were raising your children or grandchildren or nieces or nephews, when they're hungry, they're going to tell you. They are going to maybe throw a fit, maybe get a little cranky. They are going to tell you. And when they're full, on the other hand, they're going to stop eating. Maybe they'll play with their food, they'll throw it on the floor. That's happened in my family. And they really know when to start and when to stop eating. And so what's interesting is that we all have this ability, but we start to lose touch with it as we get older. And so when we think about being mindful, it's really about relearning and becoming more acquainted with our hunger and our fullness cues. And so that means, choosing to eat foods that are pleasing to you and are nourishing as well too. All right. So there's a lot of science, there's a lot of benefits that come with mindful eating. And so when we think about some of the benefits, it really empowers people to make their own best choices that are going to be in their best interest. Then we also know when people are more present and aware and more mindful of their food choices, they actually have less food cravings, and they also sense decreased risk of feeling like you're out of control when it comes to food. Has anyone ever felt that way? If there's candy, chocolate, a bowl of M&Ms, or jelly beans, sometimes it's really hard to stop ourselves. So being mindful helps lower that drive. And so with a lot of the studies that they've done on mindful eating, it's been reported that people really do have fewer feelings of that loss of control, and it really can help with those overall cravings. I'm sure all of us, we've had a craving at some time, something for sweet, something salty, see a couple heads nodding, and it really can be a really intense sensation, and it's really hard. It's hard to focus on other things. So when we become more present in our eating habits, we have more control, and that can lower it. Now, when we think about being present and mindful, it really guides you to choosing foods that you enjoy and also skipping foods that you may not be crazy about. Now, we've all been in this situation, right? Have you ever been eating something and you feel like, why am I eating this? Like, it's not even that good. Like, why am I eating this? Like, why am I eating this cake? It's not even tasty. It's a little dry, but I'm eating it because it's there, and it's something that I feel like if I don't have, I'm going to miss out. And so those are just some of the benefits when it comes to being more aware of your eating. All right. So has anyone ever been in this situation where maybe it's late at night, or maybe it's in the middle of the workday? Maybe we've been working at home more often and we kind of end up in the kitchen. We don't know how that happens. And maybe we're at the refrigerator. And someone comes downstairs and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" So this is an example of mindless eating. And so when this occurs, it really means that we're not paying full attention to the amount of food that we're eating, or if we're actually truly hungry, or if we're full. And so a lot of times mindless eating involves situations where we're not hungry. Maybe we're having a response to stress. Maybe you got an email, or maybe you got a phone call, or maybe you had a discussion with someone and it didn't go very well, or maybe you're just having an emotional day. Oftentimes we might turn to food and not pay attention to how much we are eating at that point. And so that's an example of mindless eating. Now, there's actually interesting science and research when it comes to our eating habits. And so there's something called the self-determination theory. And really what this states is that humans are motivated from within to behave in ways that support their well-being. We all have that internal drive to take care of ourselves and make the best choices that meet our interests and our health. But we also have a lot of external or extrinsic factors that can really undermine that internal motivation. Maybe you might have the best intentions, but maybe you get sidetracked. You walk into a restaurant and you smell something really enticing, or you see a commercial that's really enticing, or maybe you happen to go to a meeting and maybe multiple people are having snacks and goodies. These outside forces can really pull us towards some of those items that we know that maybe we could do without. And so really also thinking about too, we've grown up in a world where it was a common theme. It was one in mine. I don't know if it was in yours, but you must clean your plate when you're eating a meal. Did anyone else grow up with that type of, saying in your household? Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so there's often that drive that we want to be thankful for the food we have. And so we have to clean our plate. We don't want to waste anything. And so that can also drive us to eat more than we realize too. Now, we have mindless eating, which can often drive us to eat more than we realize. But on the other end of the spectrum, we have something called restrictive eating. And so this is something that maybe many of us have experienced in our years. If you've ever tried to go onto a diet, I think of January New Year's resolutions. This is a common type of eating style. And when we think about restrictive eating, this can mean anything from counting points to carbohydrates to different types of macronutrients, limiting when you're eating during the day, or even the different types of foods that you might, or really trying to modify any external factor that limits your food choices. So maybe if it's after 5 o'clock, you don't eat for the rest of the day or something of that nature. Now, this is the difference between general healthy eating and restrictive eating. General healthy eating means that nothing is restricted. Everything is available. Nothing is off limits. When it comes to restrictive eating, there's often very, very strict rules that you can't do this, you should avoid this or that. And so really, it kind of goes against those internal cues for your body. Maybe an eating plan says you need to stop eating at 6 o'clock. Well, maybe you had a busy day and maybe you didn't get a chance to have dinner, and maybe you need to eat a little bit later. So often these rules can really throw off that internal need for food. Now, what's interesting is that sometimes these restrictive eating patterns, they work for a little bit of time. Anytime we restrict something like calories or carbohydrates or any other nutrient, we're going to see changes in our weight status, which is great. But how long do these typically last, right? Not very long. A lot of those cravings might be coming back. We might be jealous seeing someone's eating that favorite food that's been off limits, and it's really, really hard to maintain. So then we start to go back to our old eating ways. So what we want to think about is trying to avoid these two opposite ends of the spectrum. We want to make sure that we're not restricting ourselves. And then we want to make sure that we're really being mindful about our eating styles and really try to think about ways that we can prevent from binge eating or overeating. So a great way to do that is to really find that middle area or that happy compromise. And so that means listening to your body. So, we might say, hey, I lost that weight, but it's not going to be something that you can maintain long term. But what we find is that when people sort of have this nice balance, they can enjoy the things that they love. Nothing is off limits, and it's going to help you feel more empowered and decrease that fear of food, and helps limit that thought process of a good or a bad food. And so if anyone's ever experienced this, let me know in the chat. Did you do some type of eating plan that helped you be successful, but then it was really hard to do long term? Let me know if you've ever experienced that. All right. So when we find that happy compromise, it really helps us with self-regulation. And so we talked about that cute little baby that I showed a few slides ago. And so that baby has grown up and has decided to become a mindful eater and build back in those behaviors. And so when we're very present about our food choices, we're less likely to eat in response to different negative emotions or snack without even noticing. Have you ever been eating something or watching TV and before you know it, the package is gone? It's happened to many of us. And so we're very in tune with our behaviors. And also, too, we know when we sort of have that balance between those two extremes, we're actually going to make a preference. We're going to have an increased preference for foods that are better for us. So we might love chocolate cake, but we know that vegetables, fruit, maybe whole grains are going to be more nutritious and more satisfying. So we're going to be more apt to choosing those better for you foods. And we can also have a better appreciation. Something one of my colleagues said to me the other day, we were talking about roasting vegetables. Has anybody been doing this? Oh, it's a great way to have a meal. And she said, and it made me laugh, and she said, you know what? They taste so good that it feels like it's bad, but it's not. It's actually something that's really good for us. And so when we become more aware of our foods, we're going to enjoy them. And even if it's healthy, it's going to taste amazing. Oh, it looks like someone had their hand up. Go ahead. Was it Marion? Let's see who. Who had, let's see if I can find.
A mistake.
Oh, okay. No
I'm
problem.
sorry.
Not a problem. All right.
Hey, that's how you trash truck.
So there's another thing that's a great consideration when we think about our household, and that's the shopping component. And so every household, whether it's one person or maybe it's multiple people in the household, we typically have the gatekeeper. And so the role of the gatekeeper is really to influence food choices in the home. And so the gatekeeper is the person that really does primarily does majority of the shopping and the meal preparation. They might also decide on what kind of meals we're going to make. And what's really interesting is that these gatekeepers, whoever it might be, can really influence what gets eaten in a household. And what they found in studies is that about 70% of the foods eaten in a home are by direct influence of that gatekeeper. So really, really fascinating. And so think about your household. Think about that person that does the shopping. You know, what kind of choices are they making? You know, they might say, if they have a thought process about a type of food, well, that can impact the rest of the family as well. So it's really, really interesting. I know in my household growing up, we have a lot of ooey gooey things, I can say as a dietitian, but it wasn't until the nutritional gatekeeper in my household, which primarily was my mom, would go shopping, when she decided to make lifestyle changes and buy new things and really try to find things that were more nourishing. It really shaped the entire household, which actually helped me decide to become a dietitian. So the role of a gatekeeper is very, very powerful. And so when we think about someone that maybe is struggling with unhealthy habits or eating choices, if that gatekeeper is an individual that's having some of those issues, that can actually pass down to the other family members. And so, you know, there's never a wrong time to start. Really, when we think about when we're shopping, even just making a few new choices each time we shop, or even looking at labels, or maybe just looking at the ingredients. As we make these small improvements, that's also going to have a huge trickle-down effect for the rest of the family. And so ideally, we want that gatekeeper to choose those foods that are going to be nourishing, and maybe there's a little bit of room for those treats, but primarily those wonderful vitamins and mineral rich fruits and vegetables and whole grains and such. So let's see here. I think I saw someone else's hand come up. I just want to pause here. Oh, Johanna, go ahead. You have a question? Okay. If not, we'll come back. All right. So one thing that can be really helpful as we're navigating the aisles and trying to learn about new products. And I can imagine it can be a very overwhelming process for some individuals. And so one place to start is to use the nutrition label and the ingredients list. This is a great way to help find things that are more nutritious. It helps you learn about the foods that you have in your cart. So using this, the nutrition facts label can really help you stay on track. And so this is helpful when we think about mindful eating, that's being aware of portion sizes. So even if it's something is just looking at the serving size of your favorite foods and saying, oh, well, who knew? This is a cup of cereal. Maybe I've been eating 2. Or maybe your favorite bag of chips. Well, maybe you've been eating handfuls. Maybe it's only 10. Really just looking at that nutrition information and just learning the amounts is a really helpful way to get started and really become more aware about the foods that you have. Also, other considerations, of course, saturated fat, sodium, fiber, added sugar. These are all other considerations. And so when you're checking out the label, glance at those areas. When you become more familiar about your foods in your cart, it really does help shape your choices. Now, we have a very helpful program at Giant. It's called Guiding Stars. And this is a very simple way to help you as you're navigating the aisles, or whoever that nutritional gatekeeper is in your house. And so Guiding Stars, it rates products based on their fiber, vitamins and minerals, heart-healthy fats, protein. And then what it does, it creates a 1, 2, or 3-star rating. So more stars, the better it is for our body, more nutritious. So if you're saying, you know what, I think I'm going to try to focus on buying some better for me products when I'm shopping, you can look for the Guiding Star logo. It'll actually be on the shelf tag right below the price. And you'll see this 1, 2, or 3-star rating. You can also download the Guiding Stars app and you can learn about any of your favorite products. And so this is a great way to make those better for you choices in the store. And so when we're thinking about our shopping, there's lots of ways to find things that are nutritious, but also better for us and tasty at the same time. So just a couple of things that I just wanted to point out when we're thinking about making different food purchases. Of course, we want to focus on items that are more nutritionally dense. So things like fruits and vegetables, beans, lentils, even things like nut butters, like peanut butter, almond butter. These are going to be satisfying and nutrient dense. And then also things maybe like quinoa or whole wheat pasta or oatmeal. These are great choices as well when it comes to grains. And even something as fun as, Saturday morning pancakes. Well, you can even opt for a different variety. And the Kodiak cake variety is a great option. It has more whole grains and more protein. So if you love pancakes, this is a great swap opportunity, as we like to say. And of course, other things too. Maybe it's low-fat dairy. Here we have Siggy's Icelandic yogurt. And you can see here that all of these items do have Guiding Stars, which is great. And it's a great way to find things that are satisfying and better for you. Now, also, oh, did someone have a question? Okay, they're making sure. So other things that can be helpful when we're thinking about treats and goodies is that, again, nothing is off limits when it comes to some of your favorite foods. So whether you are a savory person or a sweet person, there are options out there that can help you be more present and can help you minimize the amount of servings that you might have. So for instance, if you love ice cream or fruit bars, but maybe a gallon of ice cream is really, really tempting, the individual bars can be helpful because you know the serving size, they're enjoyable, and it really can help you from overeating. Also, other things, when I think about having treats, I want to find items that give me more nutritional bang for my buck. So for instance, if you love something like guacamole and chips or salsa and chips, late July, these are wonderful. They have chia seeds and quinoa, which are fibrous and have heart-healthy fats. So you get a little boost of fiber and protein in your favorite snack. And of course, if you're a chocolate fan, dark chocolate hummus, it's actually very, very tasty. And many people say hummus, really? But this is a great option if you need some chocolatey goodness. You could pair this with some graham crackers or something like fruit. And of course, if you love maybe some chocolate covered almonds or nuts, those are great. You have that crunch and you have that chocolatey goodness. And so these are all great options if we're trying to find something that's enjoyable, but just helps us minimize how much we're taking in. All right, and so when we think about balance, we want to think about what's on our plate. And so when we think about the different food groups that we're going to have with a meal, we're going to be more mindful about each of the different items and if we're missing anything. So you can use My Plate as a great starting place to say, you know what, am I getting everything that I need at my meals? So we can use this to say, I need half plate produce, so fruits and vegetables. I need a quarter grains. Okay. You can think about what kind of grains have I been eating? You know, is it a quarter of my plate? Is it half a plate? And then the last section, we want to make our last quarter of our plate some type of lean protein. So this could be plant or animal based. And also we could enjoy some dairy as well as our protein. And so we can use this as a nice starting point. One, make sure we're getting all the nutrients that we need, and it can help keep our portions in check as well. So really helpful tool. Now, when we're thinking about being more present in our eating habits, there's a lot of external factors that can impact our eating choices. And so when we see our food, so we're very visual, and so we know when we're done eating when our plate is empty. So going back to the clean the plate kind of thought process. Well, I'm going to keep eating. I might feel a little full, but I need to see that empty plate. And so that can actually drive us to overeat. Now, also thinking about how you set your table for dinner. Do you pre-plate your food at the stove and then come over at the dining room table and sit down and have your meal? What they found is if you do this method, rather than putting all of your food options in a bowl and putting it on the dining room table so it's sitting in front of you while you're eating, you're actually going to eat less, even if you walk back to the kitchen and get a second serving. So really powerful. Just that little change can really impact our intake. And then we also want to think about making it hard to be mindless. So think about TVs, smartphones, tablets, a book, anything that takes your concentration off the task at hand. So if you generally read the newspaper, maybe you watch TV while you're eating, really try to make it a little bit more difficult for you. Turn off all of those devices and focus on that task at hand. And that can really make a difference. So I encourage everyone, do a little test, do a little experiment in your home. Maybe if you haven't had dinner tonight yet, maybe when you sit down after tonight's presentation, try to disconnect and see how you feel, or try it tomorrow morning. Maybe you typically have lunch at your work desk. Maybe take your lunch away from your workspace and see if it impacts how much you eat. Now, there's other factors that we can consider when we're thinking about mindfulness, and those are some of our internal factors, excuse me. So really thinking about how quickly do you eat a meal? So sometimes it's easy to gobble things up and you forget what it even was or what it tasted like. Has anyone ever experienced that? So one thing that we can do is just slow down our pace. And so really tied to, think about all the different things that make up your food. You know, the smell, the taste. Is it sizzling? Does it have a noise? You know, what are the different flavors? When we slow down, we were really going to have an enhanced experience, and we're actually going to eat less overall. And so there's a saying that the banquet's in the first bite. So really that means that no other bite aside that first bite is going to taste better than the previous one. So really the best tasting bite is first, and then they're going to get less enjoyable as you go along in your eating. So tonight, next time you have something to eat, really take a look at your food. Think of the color, the smell, the consistency, maybe if it makes a noise, and really just see if you can, make out any of the different spices or different flavors. And this can be a really eye-opening experience. Oftentimes when we're in person, we'll do a mindful eating exercise we'll take something like a raisin or a Hershey's Kiss, and we will encourage people to slow down and really try to savor those items. And it is a very interesting experience, and you do appreciate your food when you spend a little bit more time with it. All right. So another method that we can use to be more mindful is really assessing our hunger level. And often we confuse physical and emotional hunger. And so sometimes we say that we're hungry, but are we actually hungry? And so it's important to assess, are we having physical hunger or head hunger? So head hunger would be something that, is in response to emotions. Suddenly develops, might be in, relation to stress or other factors. And oftentimes when we engage in head hunger, we often feel a little guilty after eating, or we feel a little ashamed of ourselves because after the fact we say, I wasn't really hungry. I think I was just bored or upset. Versus physical hunger, which actually starts to have a physical effect. It builds gradually. Your stomach growls. Maybe you start feeling, I think I need to eat something. My energy is going down. And so this is that signal that it is time to eat. And so what we can do is just listen to our body's cues. So we can use this hunger scale to really assess where we're at. And so what we want to do, we want to avoid the extremes. We don't want to get to a 1 and we don't want to get to a 10. So we don't want to be ravenous and we don't want to be so full that we feel sick. What we want to do is, aim to be in that 3 to 5 range when we are eating. And then maybe we stop eating before we get to that 7 to 10 range. And so this is helpful when we're eating a little bit slower. It gives our body time to assess if we are actually full. It takes our brain and our gut about 20 minutes to fully connect. So when we slow down, you're going to get more cues from your body saying, I think I'm done. I think it's time to put the fork down. So we can use this when we're eating, and it's a really helpful way to assess, do I need to eat? Maybe I'm just bored. Maybe I'm just in the kitchen. Maybe I'm just looking for something to do and I just opened up the refrigerator. But maybe I just had lunch an hour ago. So I'm actually still pretty full. I just need something to do. Versus, if you're feeling pretty hungry and you're looking for a snack, you can say, you know what, I ate about 4 hours ago. I'm really starting to have that physical response and it's time to have something to eat. So this is really, really helpful. And it's just another way to build that self-awareness when it comes to eating. Now, lastly, one of the other things that we can do to be more mindful is to cook at home. When you're at home, you have control over the whole eating experience. You can plate your own food. You can control that portion size. You can choose those ingredients that meet your needs. So whether it's managing your glucose level, your cholesterol, blood pressure, whatever those parameters might be, you can make adjustments to recipes. Versus if we go to a restaurant, we might get a really large serving and it might be very enticing and we might eat more overall. So really thinking about eating at home as much as you can. And also too, when we're cooking at home, it gives you an opportunity to try new things. And actually, that's perfect for this month because it is National Nutrition Month. And this month, the theme is celebrating a world of flavors. And so this is a great time to try maybe a new food or a spice or cuisine that maybe you've never tried before. And you can really build that appreciation for all different types of food, in the United States and across the world. So cooking at home really opens up a lot of opportunities for us as well. Plus, some people say, it's a great stress reliever. And there's such a sense of pride when you put together a meal and you can sit down and enjoy it. And lastly, before we wrap up, one thing that we want to always encourage people is to give yourself some grace. We are human. Have patience with yourself. If you're working on becoming more mindful, it takes time. It does not happen overnight. We've learned some of these behaviors as we've grown up from, being a tot. And again, it's sort of relearning other or going back to old behaviors or finding new ones that can be beneficial for our health. So it is a process. And we want to think about, things that might impact our eating habits. Are there any triggers in your house or in your office? Maybe it's looking on social media. Maybe it's looking at cooking websites or all the cooking shows that they have now. Or is it something like allowing yourself to get too hungry? Maybe, you skipped lunch, and so you're getting really, really hungry, and that can drive us to overeat later in the day. So really try to be aware of those different triggers and see how you can manage them or avoid them. And then this is always really interesting. We make about 200 decisions a day related to food. Now just think about that for a second. 200 decisions. Is there anything else that we do throughout the day that involves 200 decisions? Maybe our children, maybe work, but food is on our mind at all times of the day. What's for breakfast? What's for lunch? What am I going to have to drink? What size do I want? What dressing do I want with my salad? So we're going to make a lot of decisions. You know what? Some are going to be better than others, but it's that process. And those small changes that you make in those food decisions can add up for big successes overall too. So definitely it's a process to become more mindful. All right. And so I love this mindful eating topic because I always like to send home homework or challenges. And so really my challenge for everyone tonight is, think about your eating habits. Think about those triggers. Think about where, when, why, and how you are eating. It's really, really eye-opening at times. And I've done this experiment even as a dietitian in practice. I've done this experiment. I've written down, how I felt before and after eating a meal. And it really does build that self-awareness, and it helps you highlight some of the tendencies we might have when it comes to food. So I always encourage people to, take some time, be self-aware, and see if there's anything that you notice in yourself. And then we also have a really great podcast episode that talks all about being more mindful. So I encourage everyone to check out our podcast. And on the next slide, I'll show you how to find that. So again, at Giant, we have a whole team of registered dietitians that make up our Healthy Living team. And so we have a variety of free services. So we offer consultations. We have weekly classes that are online. All you have to do is take that QR code or your camera reader on your phone and scan the QR codes. And it'll take this will take you right to our website. And then we have our Healthy Living by Giant Facebook group, which is another great resource. You can meet our team and get some tips and tricks related to health and wellness. And of course, the podcast that I mentioned, our Healthy Living by Giant podcast, is a wealth of information. We have over 100 episodes, which is pretty amazing. So all things related to health and wellness. So with that, I will pause. And if anyone has any thoughts, questions, I'm happy to answer them before I turn it over to the team.
Thank you for that awesome presentation, Melanie. I definitely will be more conscious about the next food decisions I make.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear that, Eric. Great.
Very valuable tips. Thank you guys all for joining us tonight for our presentation. So before we leave, we do have a few announcements that we would like to share with you all. We would love to have your feedback, so please be on the lookout for an email with a link to complete a survey for a chance to win a $25 Amazon gift card, along with any other resources from the program tonight. Secondly, the program recording will be available upon request, so no need to worry if you missed any part of tonight's wonderful presentation. And finally, please join us for our cooking demonstration next week on March 15th from 6 to 7 p.m. as we continue to celebrate National Nutrition Month. Thank you guys all for joining us again, and we hope you have a wonderful night.
Thank you for joining us for National Nutrition Month. For more videos to help you make healthier choices, visit the Department of Parks and Recreation's online resource center at pgparks.com or the Health and Wellness Virtual Library at wellness.pgparks.com. Until next time, be healthy, be well. Thank you again for